Marcus's eyes opened a little and he gave out a profound yawn. The Minotaur got out of bed and then planted his hooves on the floor. He stretched with both arms and then stood up. For a brief moment, Marcus gazed up at the ceiling, which was only about several inches above the tips of his horns. While he couldn't jump, Marcus at least fit in his accommodations. He had heard stories about other individuals who were far less fortunate than he was. The time on the alarm clock read 5:24 a.m., which means he had less than an hour and a half before his ID badge would flash. With haste, Marcus went about his morning routine. Shower, coffee, breakfast, a morning shit, morning stretches, and finally, some brief meditation. His ID badge had been placed in his slacks, so when it was time to flash, he would be ready. Most mornings, Marcus usually had the luxury of being ahead of schedule, which meant more time for contemplation and centering. However, yesterday's murder hobo raid had been a little more intense than previous days. Whereas most days, he would briskly shift from one task to the next, Marcus felt a little more sluggish today. He glanced at the clock and noticed he only had 10 minutes or so to perform his mantras. After his third mantra, the magic of the ID badge activated. It started out fairly tame, gently vibrating within the confines of his pocket. The tremors strengthened, and so Marcus stood up. His body became bathed in a slight energy aura, and crackles of power flipped out all around him. His apartment became bathed in light, and then the light faded. Marcus stood in one of the teleportation centers for the dungeon he worked in. It was a fairly large circular room with a single doorway along the far wall. The walls of the room were made from the same brown brickwork that made up most of the corridors throughout the dungeon. 7 fairly wide teleporter discs sat throughout the room, and they all had magical wires connecting to a singular console where an operator monitored the arcane readings and such. Marcus stepped off of the teleportation pad and moved up to the operator, a young woman named Karen. Karen was quite interesting as she didn't have an actual face. She had a head, long blonde hair, and a body. But the center of Karen's face consisted of a black hole that dipped into an infinite nothing. Within the confines of the black hole were vague wispy clouds that often formed color patterns when she expressed emotion. When Karen was happy, pinks and purples swirled within the blackened space. When she was pissed, reds and oranges vibrated wildly. However, lately, when Marcus approached her, flashes of green and yellow made circular patterns or other such movements. Karen's body was humanoid and had the typical attributes of a mammal-like species. Marcus's favorite thing about Karen was when she spoke, because her words reverberated within his mind. As he stepped up to the panel, 4 more teleporter pads flashed. Other monsters stepped off of the pads and then moved toward the door.
Good morning, Karen.
Karen's face exploded in slithering greens and zipping yellows.
Morning. How are you today?
Marcus shrugged.
Oh, I'm all right. Yesterday's band of murder hobos really got me good, so I had to go see Dennis.
Oh, no.
Karen placed her hands on the sides of her cheeks.
I hope it was nothing too serious. You look like you're all right.
She paused, and the greens and yellows intensified for a moment. She tucked some hair behind her ear.
So, how are you liking the job? You started last month, right?
Marcus smiled.
Yeah, so far it's pretty cool. I mean, I kind of knew what to expect since one of my moms also works for Dungeons, Inc. She's not stationed here, though, but at the Lost Temple of Nexina.
One of your moms? So...
She fumbled with her fingers a little.
Is that like a Minotaur thing, or,
He couldn't help but laugh.
No, I have 2 moms because love comes in all forms.
Immediately, Karen waved her hands about in an excited fashion. and pale blue shapes spun around in her face.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be rude. I just...
It's cool. These days, with so many monster species running about, you never know. To be honest, I'm not even sure what species you are. Still, it doesn't really matter. You're a pretty cool person.
A few sudden slivers of green and yellow emerged amidst the blue in Karen's face.
I am?
Well, yeah. You were the first person I met, and you've been so nice to me ever since. It's actually really cool that I get to start off my day with seeing you. It pumps me up, you know?
The green and the yellow almost filled the full expanse of Karen's whole, and she started fumbling with a golden necklace that was around her neck.
Thank you. It's so nice to hear you say...
One of the teleporter pads flashed, and a tall man stood on it. The green and the yellow died away, leaving only blackness. Marcus peered over at the man. The man had blue skin, elongated arms and legs, and a strange-looking face. A long, pointed nose stretched off of the man's face, and a well-combed forest green mustache lived just under the man's nostrils. The man wore a pointed hat with a wide brim, and a large harpy feather sticking out of the leopard-colored strip around the base of the hat. He also wore a light purple suit that looked like something a radical kind of undertaker might wear. The man's only weapon was a long bullwhip that was wrapped around his belt. In just a few steps, the man approached Karen and Marcus. Sharp red and orange lines started going crisscross amidst Karen's face.
Oh, don't be like that, precious.
The lines zipped around faster. The image of a blood-red dagger flashed across her face.
You know, you don't have to be so aggressive.
He turned an eye at Marcus.
Got a problem, Moo?
Marcus narrowed his eyes.
Yeah, actually, I do.
Karen's blackness reset, and the clouds disappeared for a moment.
Oh.
The man shifted around and actually towered over Marcus by at least 1.5 feet.
Spit it out, Moo.
First of all, the name's not Moo. Secondly, you're obviously pissing off Karen, and that's not cool.
The man laughed.
Oh! Is that so?
He laughed harder.
That's great. Just great. Look at you coming to the rescue. And here I thought she was a vegetarian. I guess she does like beef after all.
Karen's black hole became filled with pale blues, stormy grays, and sickly-looking reds. Marcus balled his fists.
If you don't leave her alone right now, I'll...
You'll what?
The man placed a hand on his weapon. Marcus took a threatening step closer to him.
I'll choke you out with your own whip.
Threatening a fellow employee? That's a major HR concern.
So is harassing a fellow employee. Sexual harassment is especially damning.
The man's mirth stopped. Marcus took another step closer.
Let's go to HR together, shall we?
A brief moment passed before the man stepped away from the console and headed toward the exit of the room. When the door closed behind him, Marcus turned to Karen. Her face was masked in pale blue and stormy gray hues.
I'm really sorry. I know that wasn't my business, but...
Karen's colors changed to a combination of pinks, purples, greens, and yellows. In truth, her face looked like a field of spring flowers.
Thank you for that. It means so much. Brad is such an asshole, and I just hate him so much.
Brad, huh? So what did he do to piss you off?
Red lines slipped into patterns with pale blue and gray ones.
Brad and I had a fling a couple of months back. I really liked him, and he said he liked me too. But after we spent the night together one time, he told a bunch of other people that...
Storm gray clouds masked the majority of her face.
Well, He said some things that got other people interested in me. It made me sound like a big slut, and I hate it.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Karen stared up at Marcus. At least the black hole faced him anyway.
I'm not a slut, despite what you might hear, okay?
Marcus grinned at her.
I promise I won't feed into what anyone else says, especially that prick Brad. I still think you're awesome. And besides, even if it were true, it's your body.
Really?
Greens and yellows made swirl patterns amidst the black.
Yeah.
He started to move to the door, but he turned around as he moved.
Hey, I better go before Andrew comes looking for me. It was great to see you. Have a great day.
Karen just waved. Marcus moved out of the teleportation center and down the wide hallway. Despite the fact that the corridors looked exactly like the same ones on the actual dungeon floor, these hallways seldom saw any murder hobo traffic. Marcus strolled down the hall, took a right, and then came to a massive bulletin board just outside the main administrative offices. The board contained various kinds of information. The names of all the monster employees and their shift times were nailed to the far side of the board. Usually it didn't change, but it magically updated when new people were hired, or when people were laid off. A few motivational posters lay in various places beside the schedules. Marcus's favorite was of an ogre sitting on a pile of dead adventurers, with the caption, "The only good murder hobo is a murdered murder hobo." There were also several folders containing various forms and other such things beside the posters. Towards the far left of the board was a magical map that updated daily. The map was an exact layout of the dungeon, and it showed where all of the chamber placements were at. Marcus moved up to the map.
Hey, Marcus.
Marcus turned around and gazed down at the small purple imp that hovered level with his chest. The imp had a pair of black leather bat wings extending from his body, and they flapped continuously. Surprisingly, the imp had massively toned pecs, thighs, and arms. But then again, Andrew was a bodybuilder. In the 45-pound weight class, Andrew was a beast. Andrew's head was bald, and a massive cigar that would have looked more size-appropriate in Marcus's mouth extended past Andrew's thin lips. Andrew puffed on the cigar a little, and then pointed at the map.
So, I just finished the report from Dennis last night. Looks like you got banged up pretty good, huh?
Yeah. I did the best I could, and I managed to beat them all.
Oh, I'm not saying you didn't do a good job.
Andrew floated up and lightly tapped Marcus's chin with his tiny fist.
Oh yeah, you sure showed them. But you still got banged up. Maybe you could use a body or two till you're stronger.
Marcus winced.
I'm sorry. I know I should be.
Marcus. You're not in trouble. And I'm not gonna take your chamber away. We just need to find the best fit for you. And I need to keep those raise numbers as low as I can. Otherwise, the boss will have my head.
So what would you like me to do?
Instead of working on your chamber today, we're gonna have you work with one of our seasoned veterans.
Andrew pointed to a spot on the map.
He's one hell of a brute.
Marcus looked at the map, and his stomach churned. A single name rested on the room's space, written in flowing black penmanship.
Get out of here.
Andrew said as he puffed another couple of times on his cigar.
You know the old saying, right? Let your guard down and a murder hobo will steal your balls.
Marcus chuckled a little, despite his eminent day of fun.
Where do they say that? I have never heard that saying.
Andrew waved him off.
It's probably just an imp saying. I look like some kind of saying historian. No, I ain't. Have a good day, Marcus.
The imp floated back into the offices as Marcus trudged down the hallway. Today was Avery's day off, and he hadn't got a chance to see where Nina was stationed today. It took a bit for Marcus to find the room. When he did, a great sea of annoyance flourished within him. The floor had been painted a rusty orange color and had a wooden plank kind of pattern. Magenta walls lined the chamber, and the ceiling depicted a star-filled sky, only the stars were colored with bright, eye-gouging hues. Magenta-colored couches lay at the edges of the walls. A group of monsters sat on the far end of the couches, opposite where Marcus had come in. The other monsters were strangers to him, but the man with the forest green mustache in the middle was not. Brad grinned from ear to ear.
Moo Moo, what are you doing here?